The three sons of Elysia cast long shadows across the crystal plains as the massive dragon known as Stormwing roared in defiance. His blue scales caught the light, sending flashes of color in all directions. The chains that held him groaned under his strength. 20 Elysian guards stood at a safe distance, their energy spears pointed at the beast. "He destroyed another mining post last night," said Guard Captain Dojin to the small group of officials who had come to see the captured dragon. "That's the third one this month." Elder Taiho nodded slowly. He was the oldest member of the Elysian High Council, his skin pale blue and marked with the age lines of his species. His long robes swept the ground as he moved closer to inspect the dragon. "Such a waste," he said. "The strongest dragon we've ever captured, and still we cannot tame him." Stormwing let out another roar and breathed a jet of blue fire that stopped just short of the energy barrier surrounding him. His eyes, bright yellow with black slits, fixed on Elder Taiho with pure hatred. "The sacrifice will proceed in 3 days at the alignment of our moons," Elder Taiho announced. "The beast is too dangerous to keep alive." The small group of officials murmured their agreement, all except for Counselor Jiwoo, who stepped forward with concern on her face. "Elder, with respect, this dragon is one of the last storm-class dragons on our planet. Our ancestors wrote that they are vital to the weather patterns of the eastern regions." Elder Taiho waved his hand dismissively. "The old texts are full of superstition, Counselor. What matters is the safety of our people. This beast has killed 17 handlers. Its death will serve as an example to the other dragons." Unknown to the gathered Elysians, a small figure watched from behind a pile of supply crates. Minho, a human boy of 12 years, crouched low to avoid being seen. His clothes were worn and patched, his black hair long and unkempt. But his eyes were sharp and missed nothing. Minho had lived on Elysia for 5 years, ever since his parents' research ship crashed during the first human expedition to the planet. He was the only survivor, and in the chaos that followed, the Elysians never realized a human child had been left behind. Minho had learned to survive in the shadows of their society, stealing food when needed and making his home in the forgotten places of the main colony. As the officials turned to leave, Minho stayed hidden. He watched as Stormwing continued to fight against his chains, the dragon's neural pathways, glowing lines visible beneath his translucent armor plates, pulsing with anger and fear. "They're going to kill you," Minho whispered to himself. "Just because they don't understand you." The boy waited until the guards changed shifts before slipping away through a drainage pipe that led back to the colony. He moved quickly through the underground tunnels, pathways that only someone as small as him could navigate. The Elysians were tall, thin beings, nearly twice the height of an adult human. Their world wasn't built for someone like Minho, which made it easy for him to remain unseen. His home was an abandoned maintenance room deep beneath the colony's power plant. The constant hum of machinery masked any sounds he might make, and the heat from the generators kept him warm during the cold Elysian nights. Minho had filled the small space with items he'd collected over the years. Broken tech he'd repaired, food rations, and most importantly, his parents' research materials that he'd salvaged from the crash site. Minho pulled out a worn tablet and powered it on. The screen flickered to life, showing his mother's research notes on Elysian wildlife. He scrolled through until he found the section on dragons. "Dragons are not simply animals," his mother had written. "Their neural pathways suggest a complex communication system, and possibly even higher intelligence. The Elysians have domesticated some species but treat them as beasts of burden rather than sentient beings." There was more, theories about how the dragon's neural pathways might be used to communicate with them, how their fire-breathing was connected to the atmospheric conditions of Elysia, how they might be vital to the planet's ecosystem. Minho looked at a small collection of dragon scales he'd gathered during his explorations outside the colony. Among them was a single blue scale, shimmering with the same color as Stormwing's hide. He had found it months ago near a mountain lake and had been fascinated by its beauty. "I won't let them kill you," Minho said, clutching the scale. "Mom would have wanted to understand you, not destroy you." The next morning, Minho woke early and gathered supplies. He took his mother's neural interface device, a small headband, designed to read and interpret brain patterns, and the tools he would need to modify it. If his mother's theories were correct, the device might be adapted to read the dragon's neural pathways. He slipped out of his hiding place and made his way to the colony's technology disposal area. The Elysians were constantly upgrading their tech, discarding anything they considered outdated. For Minho, it was a treasure trove of parts and materials. As he sorted through a pile of discarded components, he heard voices approaching. Quickly, he ducked behind a large container. "The sacrifice preparations are underway," said a voice Minho recognized as Elder Taiho's. "We need the ceremonial chamber ready by tomorrow." "Yes, Elder," replied another voice. "And what of the dragon's remains?" "The scales will be distributed among the council members, as is tradition. The rest will be processed for research." Minho's hands tightened into fists. The casual way they discussed Stormwing's death made his blood boil. To them, the dragon was just a problem to solve, a resource to use. Once the voices faded, Minho continued his search with renewed urgency. By midday, he had collected everything he needed. He returned to his hideout and began working on the neural interface. Hours passed as Minho carefully modified the device according to his mother's notes. He connected the blue dragon scale to the interface, hoping it might help attune the device to Stormwing's neural patterns. It was well past midnight when he finally finished. "I hope this works," he muttered, testing the device on his own head. The interface lit up, reading his brain patterns and displaying them on a small screen. It wasn't perfect, but it might be enough. Minho knew he had to act fast. The sacrifice was scheduled for the alignment of Elysia's 3 moons, just 2 days away. He needed to reach Stormwing before then, and somehow free the dragon from captivity. The next morning, Minho packed his modified neural interface and a few tools. He also took a small food ration and a water container. The holding facility where Stormwing was kept was on the outskirts of the colony, a good 2-hour journey through the maintenance tunnels. As Minho made his way through the dark passages, he thought about what he was about to do. If he succeeded, he would be saving a life. If he failed, he might lose his own. The Elysians had never shown interest in him before, but freeing their most dangerous captive would certainly change that. When he finally reached the outer wall of the holding facility, Minho paused to catch his breath. Through a small vent, he could see Stormwing in the central containment area. The dragon was still fighting against his restraints, but his movements seemed weaker than before. The guards had placed a suppression field around him that was slowly draining his energy. "They're weakening you for the sacrifice," Minho whispered. "I need to get in there tonight." He spent the rest of the day observing the facility, noting the guard rotations and security measures. There was a small maintenance hatch near the ground that the tall Elysians rarely used. It would be a tight fit even for Minho, but it might be his only way in. As the suns began to set, casting the world in a purple twilight, Minho steeled his resolve. He would return after dark, when the guard presence was reduced. He would save Stormwing or die trying. "Hold on," he said quietly, looking at the weakening dragon through the vent. "I'm coming for you." Night fell over Elysia, bringing with it a deep blue darkness broken only by the glow of the colony's lights and the distant shimmer of crystal formations. Minho waited until the second moon rose before making his move. He had spent hours watching the guard patterns at the holding facility. Now was his chance. The small maintenance hatch was partially hidden by overgrown native plants. Minho squeezed through the tight opening, his thin frame barely fitting. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of metal and ozone, the distinct scent of the energy fields used to contain the dragons. Minho moved silently through the narrow maintenance tunnel. His years of living in the shadows had taught him how to move without making a sound. He carried his modified neural interface in a small bag strapped to his back, along with a few tools he might need. The tunnel opened into a small control room. Through a viewing window, Minho could see Stormwing in the main containment area. The dragon lay on his side, his massive chest rising and falling with labored breaths. The energy tethers binding him pulsed with blue light, keeping him weak and unable to use his fire. 2 Elysian guards stood at the far end of the containment area, talking quietly. Minho needed to get past them somehow. He looked around the control room and spotted a panel of switches. His mother's research had included basic information about Elysian technology. If he remembered correctly, these controls managed the facility's lighting and climate systems. Carefully, Minho approached the panel and examined the switches. He found what he was looking for, the lighting controls for the outer sections of the facility. With a deep breath, he flipped several switches at once. Alarms immediately blared as sections of the facility went dark. The two guards looked up in surprise, then hurried toward the exit to investigate. "Now's my chance," Minho whispered to himself. As soon as the guards left, he slipped through a small door connecting the control room to the containment area. He ran across the open space toward Stormwing, his heart pounding in his chest. The dragon's eyes snapped open as Minho approached. Even weakened, Stormwing was terrifying up close. His head alone was twice the size of Minho's entire body. A low growl rumbled from the dragon's throat and his neural pathways flashed with warning colors. "I'm not here to hurt you," Minho said softly, holding up his hands to show he carried no weapons. "I want to help you." Stormwing's yellow eyes narrowed. The dragon tried to lift his head but could barely move under the influence of the energy tethers. Minho knew he had little time before the guards returned. He quickly pulled out the neural interface from his bag and placed it on his own head. The device powered on, its lights blinking as it read his brain patterns. "I hope this works," he muttered. He carefully approached Stormwing's head, moving slowly to avoid startling the dragon. When he was close enough, he reached out with a trembling hand and placed it on the dragon's snout, just below one of the visible neural pathways. The effect was immediate and unexpected. The neural interface sparked with energy, creating a connection between Minho's mind and the dragon's neural system. Images flooded into Minho's head, vast skies seen from above, the joy of flying through clouds, the pain of capture, and the fear of the coming sacrifice. Minho gasped and almost pulled away, but something told him to maintain the connection. He focused his thoughts, trying to send his own message to the dragon. "My name is Minho," he thought clearly. "I want to free you." Stormwing's eyes widened. The dragon's neural pathways shifted from angry reds to curious blues and greens. Through their connection, Minho felt the dragon's surprise and confusion. "You understand me," Minho whispered in amazement. The dragon's response came not in words, but in feelings and images, curiosity about this small human, suspicion of his motives, and a desperate desire for freedom. "I'm going to try to disable these tethers," Minho said, pointing to the energy bonds holding the dragon. "But you have to promise not to hurt me or anyone else when you're free." Stormwing's neural pathways pulsed with what Minho somehow understood as agreement. The connection between them was growing stronger by the second, allowing for more complex communication. Minho moved quickly to the nearest control panel. The Elysian text was difficult for him to read, but he had learned enough over the years to understand the basics. He found the controls for the energy tethers and began working to disable them. "This is more complicated than I thought," he muttered as he tried different combinations of buttons and switches. Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the facility. A voice announced over the speakers, "Alert! Unauthorized access in Containment Section 3. All security personnel report immediately." Minho's heart raced. "They know someone's here." Through their connection, he felt Stormwing's panic rising. The dragon's neural pathways flashed with urgent colors. "I need more time," Minho said, working faster at the control panel. The sound of running footsteps echoed from the corridor. The guards were returning. Minho had seconds, not minutes. In desperation, he pulled out a small tool from his bag, a device he had built from scrap parts that could generate a small electromagnetic pulse. It was meant to be a last resort, as it would likely damage the neural interface as well. "This might hurt both of us," he warned Stormwing, "but it's our only chance." The dragon's neural pathways pulsed once in what Minho understood as consent. Just as the door to the containment area began to open, Minho activated the EMP device. A wave of energy spread outward, temporarily disabling all electronic systems in the immediate area. The energy tethers flickered and died. The lights went out, plunging the room into darkness. Minho felt a sharp pain in his head as the neural interface shorted out, but the connection with Stormwing remained, fainter but still present. It seemed their bond had become something more than just technology. In the darkness, Stormwing rose to his full height. His neural pathways glowed brightly, illuminating the containment area with an eerie blue light. The dragon stretched his wings, which nearly spanned the entire width of the room. The guards burst in, energy spears raised. "Stop, don't move!" one shouted, his voice shaking with fear at the sight of the freed dragon. Stormwing turned toward them and opened his mouth. The guards braced for fire, but instead the dragon let out a deafening roar that shook the entire facility. "We need to go now," Minho shouted, climbing onto a nearby platform to get closer to the dragon. Through their connection, he felt Stormwing's intention. The dragon lowered his head, allowing Minho to climb onto his neck, just behind the armored crest that protected his head. "Hold on tight," Minho heard in his mind, not words exactly, but a clear meaning that somehow translated itself. Stormwing reared back and unleashed a blast of blue fire at the ceiling. The reinforced material, designed to withstand most attacks, began to melt under the intense heat. The guards fired their energy spears, but the bolts bounced harmlessly off Stormwing's scales. With another powerful blast, the dragon created a hole large enough to escape through. He crouched low, then launched himself upward with incredible force. Minho clung desperately to the dragon's neck as they shot through the opening and into the night sky. The cool air rushed past them as Stormwing's wings spread wide, catching the wind. Below, alarms blared throughout the colony. Searchlights swept the sky, trying to track their escape. "We did it," Minho shouted, his voice lost in the wind, but his joy reaching Stormwing through their connection. The dragon banked sharply to avoid an energy blast from a defense tower. They needed to get beyond the colony's perimeter, to the mountains where the Elysians rarely ventured. As they flew higher, Minho looked back at the colony, the only home he had known for 5 years. He was leaving everything behind, but for the first time since losing his parents, he didn't feel alone. Through their connection, he felt Stormwing's gratitude and something else, a promise of protection. The dragon would not abandon the small human who had risked everything to save him. Together they soared toward the distant mountains, their unlikely partnership just beginning. Dawn broke over the mountains of Elysia, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Stormwing landed on a wide ledge high above the valley floor. Minho slid from the dragon's neck, his legs shaky after hours of flight. His clothes were torn from the escape and his face was streaked with dirt, but his eyes shone with excitement. "We made it," he said, looking back toward the distant colony. It was barely visible from this height, just a small cluster of lights on the horizon. Stormwing settled beside him, folding his massive wings against his body. The dragon's breathing had steadied, but Minho could see that the escape had taken a toll. Some of Stormwing's scales were damaged where the energy tethers had bound him, and there was a thin cut along his left flank from a guard's energy spear. Minho reached out hesitantly and placed his hand on the dragon's side. The neural interface on his head had been damaged by the EMP, but to his surprise he could still feel a faint connection with Stormwing. It was as if their minds had formed a bond that went beyond the technology. "You're hurt," Minho said, examining the cut. "I need to clean this." Through their connection he felt Stormwing's dismissal of the injury. The dragon was more concerned about Minho, sending feelings of worry about the small human's condition. "I'm fine," Minho assured him. "Just tired." And hungry. He looked around the ledge. It opened into a shallow cave that offered shelter from the elements. A small stream trickled down the rock face nearby, providing fresh water. It would make a good temporary home while they decided what to do next. Minho cupped his hands and drank from the stream, then splashed water on his face. The cool liquid washed away the dirt and helped clear his mind. He turned back to Stormwing, who was watching him with curious yellow eyes. "I need to fix this," Minho said, tapping the damaged neural interface, "so we can talk better." He removed the device and examined it. The main power cell was fried and several connections had melted, but the core processor seemed intact, and the dragon scale he had integrated into it still glowed with a faint blue light. "I can repair this," he decided, "but I'll need tools and parts." Stormwing's neural pathways pulsed with what Minho now recognized as a question. The dragon was wondering why Minho had saved him. "My parents were scientists," Minho explained, sitting down beside the dragon. "They came to study Elysia and its creatures. They believed dragons were intelligent beings, not just animals to be tamed or killed. When their ship crashed, I was the only survivor." He paused, the memory still painful even after 5 years. "The Elysians never found me. I've been hiding in their colony, living in the shadows, When I heard they were going to sacrifice you, I couldn't let it happen. My parents would have wanted me to help you." Stormwing lowered his head until it was level with Minho. The dragon's eyes studied him intently. Through their faint connection, Minho felt a complex mix of emotions: gratitude, respect, and curiosity about humans. "I think you're the first dragon to ever meet a human," Minho said with a small smile. "We're not so different, really. We both just want to be free." Over the next few days, Minho and Stormwing established a routine. Each morning, the dragon would hunt in the valleys below, bringing back food for both of them. Minho would cook his portion over a small fire while working on repairing the neural interface. He had to be creative with his repairs. Without proper tools or parts, he used what nature provided: crystal shards that could focus energy, plant fibers for binding components, and mineral deposits that conducted electricity. His years of surviving on his own had made him resourceful. On the fourth day, Minho finally completed the repairs. The neural interface looked different now, more organic, with the dragon scale fully integrated into its structure. He placed it on his head and activated it. The connection with Stormwing immediately strengthened. The dragon, who had been dozing in the sun, lifted his head in surprise. "Can you understand me better now?" Minho asked. "Yes, small one," came the response in his mind. It wasn't exactly words, but rather concepts and images that Minho's brain translated into language. "Your device bridges our minds," Minho gasped. "You can talk. I mean, I can hear your thoughts clearly now." Stormwing seemed amused by Minho's excitement. "I have always been able to communicate. Your kind simply lacked the means to listen." "The Elysians don't understand you at all, do they?" Minho asked. "They see us as beasts to be tamed," Stormwing replied, a hint of anger coloring his thoughts. "They capture our young and break their spirits. Those who cannot be broken are sacrificed," Minho frowned. "That's terrible. My parents suspected dragons were intelligent, but they never got the chance to prove it." "Your parents were wise," Stormwing acknowledged. "Unlike the Elysians, who have forgotten the old ways." "What old ways?" Minho asked, curious. Stormwing's neural pathways glowed brighter as he shared images from long ago. Elysians and dragons working together, flying side by side, sharing knowledge and resources. "Once, we were partners," the dragon explained. "The Elysians respected us, and we helped them build their civilization. But generations passed, and they began to see themselves as masters rather than equals. They forgot how to communicate with us and instead tried to control us with force. That's why you fought them," Minho realized. "You weren't being wild or dangerous. You were defending yourself." "I am the last of the Storm-class dragons," Stormwing said, his thoughts tinged with sadness. "We were the guardians of the sky, maintaining the weather patterns that keep this world in balance. Without us, the storms grow more violent each season." Minho remembered the increasing number of severe weather events that had plagued the colony in recent years. The Elysians had built stronger shelters and developed better warning systems, but they never seemed to consider that the cause might be their own actions. "We need to show them," Minho said suddenly. "We need to show the Elysians that dragons are intelligent beings, that you're not just animals to be used." Stormwing's neural pathways flashed with alarm. "They will try to capture us both. You are taking a great risk, small one." "My name is Minho," he reminded the dragon with a smile. "And yes, it's risky, but it's the right thing to do. My parents would have wanted to bridge the gap between species. I can continue their work." The dragon was quiet for a long moment, considering. Finally, his neural pathways settled into a calm blue pattern. "Very well, Minho. But first there is something I must show you." The next morning they set off deeper into the mountains. Stormwing flew with Minho on his back, climbing higher than they had gone before. The air grew thin and cold, but the dragon's body radiated heat that kept Minho warm. They passed over jagged peaks and hidden valleys until they reached a massive crater nestled among the highest mountains. Stormwing descended into the crater, landing on a flat area near its center. "What is this place?" Minho asked, sliding from the dragon's back. "A sacred place," Stormwing replied. "The birthplace of dragons." Minho looked around in awe. The crater walls were lined with crystal formations that caught the sunlight and broke it into thousands of rainbow patterns. In the center was a pool of shimmering liquid that seemed to glow from within. "The Elysians call it the heart of the world," Stormwing explained. "They have forgotten its importance, but their ancestors knew. This is where life on Elysia began." Minho approached the pool cautiously. The liquid inside wasn't water. It was thicker, almost like mercury, but it glowed with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "Touch it," Stormwing urged. "It will not harm you." Hesitantly, Minho knelt and dipped his fingers into the pool. The liquid felt warm and seemed to cling to his skin momentarily before sliding off. A tingling sensation spread up his arm and throughout his body. "What is it doing?" he asked, alarmed but not afraid. "It is reading you," Stormwing explained. "Learning your pattern. The heart remembers every living thing that touches it." As Minho withdrew his hand, he noticed something strange. The neural interface on his head was glowing brighter, and the connection with Stormwing felt stronger than ever. "The heart has strengthened our bond," the dragon confirmed. "Now we are truly connected." Minho stood up, feeling different somehow, more aware, more alive. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because you need to understand what is at stake," Stormwing said gravely. "The heart is failing. Without the dragons to maintain it, its energy diminishes. If it dies, all life on Elysia will eventually follow." Minho looked at the pool with new understanding. "Then we really do need to convince the Elysians to change. Not just for the dragons, but for everyone." "Yes," Stormwing agreed. "And you, Minho, may be the only one who can bridge our worlds." As they prepared to leave the crater, Minho felt a new sense of purpose. He was no longer just an orphan hiding in the shadows. He was a bridge between species, a translator of worlds, and somehow he knew that this was exactly what his parents would have wanted him to become. 1 week after their visit to the heart of the world, Minho sat at the edge of their mountain ledge watching the colony through a small viewing scope he had made from crystal shards. The Elysians were in a state of high alert. Search parties regularly flew out in their hovering vessels, scanning the mountains for any sign of Stormwing. "They're not giving up," Minho said with a frown. "Elder Tejo has doubled the patrols." Stormwing lay behind him, his massive body curled around the entrance to their cave. Since their visit to the heart, the dragon's wounds had healed completely. His scales now shone with a brighter blue, and his neural pathways pulsed with renewed energy. "Tejo fears what he cannot control," the dragon replied through their mental link. "He has built his power on the belief that dragons are mere beasts. Our partnership threatens everything he stands for." Minho lowered the scope and turned to face Stormwing. "We need allies. Not all Elysians think like Tejo. I remember Counselor Jiwoo spoke against the sacrifice. Can she be trusted?" Stormwing asked, his yellow eyes narrowing. "I don't know," Minho admitted. "But we have to try. The heart is getting weaker and we can't fix this alone." Their plan took shape over the next 2 days. Minho would return to the colony under cover of darkness and seek out Counselor Jiwoo. If she proved sympathetic, they would ask for her help in arranging a meeting with other council members, those who might be open to learning the truth about dragons. "It's too dangerous," Stormwing argued as Minho prepared to leave. "The Elysians will capture you." "They don't know about me," Minho reminded him. "To them, I'm just a ghost story, the human child who supposedly survived the crash. Most don't even believe I exist." "Tejo will not be so easily fooled," Stormwing warned. "He has seen you now." Minho checked his supplies one last time. He had packed light, just enough food for a day, a water container, and his improved neural interface. The device now looked almost like a thin circlet, with the dragon scale seamlessly integrated into its design. "I'll be careful," he promised. "Our connection will let you know if I'm in trouble. And if things go wrong, I'll run to the eastern ridge. You can pick me up there." Stormwing lowered his head until it was level with Minho's. The dragon's breath was warm against the boy's face. "Be safe, small one. You carry the hope of 2 species." As night fell, Stormwing carried Minho to a point just outside the colony's sensor range. From there, the boy would continue on foot. The 3 moons of Elysia were all in different phases, providing just enough light to see by without making him too visible. "I'll be back by tomorrow night," Minho said as he slid from the dragon's back. Stormwing watched as the small human figure disappeared into the darkness. Through their connection, he could sense Minho's determination and courage. The dragon turned and flew back toward the mountains, his heart heavy with worry. Minho approached the colony from the west, where the security was lightest. He knew every blind spot in the sensor grid from his years of coming and going undetected. The maintenance tunnels he had used before would be watched now. But there were other ways in: drainage pipes, ventilation shafts, and service corridors that the tall Elysians rarely used. He slipped through a narrow gap in the outer wall where two sections didn't quite meet. Inside, he kept to the shadows, moving quickly and quietly through the lower levels of the colony. His destination was the residential tower where the council members lived. The hour was late, and most Elysians were in their sleep cycle. Still, Minho had to dodge patrols twice before reaching the base of the tower. Getting up to Counselor Jiwoo's quarters would be the hardest part. The main lifts were monitored, and the emergency stairs would have security checkpoints. Minho studied the tower's exterior. Like most Elysian buildings, it had a decorative outer shell with space between it and the actual structure. If he could get into that space, he might be able to climb up undetected. He found an access panel near ground level, likely used for maintenance. It was locked, but Minho had learned how to bypass Elysian security systems years ago. With a small tool he had fashioned from scrap metal, he triggered the emergency release mechanism. The panel slid open with a soft hiss. Minho squeezed through into the narrow space between the outer shell and the inner wall. It was dark and dusty, but there were enough handholds for him to start climbing. The ascent was slow and tiring. Twice, Minho had to stop and press himself against the wall as maintenance drones passed by on their regular rounds. His small size was an advantage here. The drones were programmed to detect Elysian-sized intruders, not humans. Finally, he reached the level where Counselor Jiwoo's quarters were located. According to the colony's public records, which Minho had accessed during his years of hiding, she lived in the east wing of the 15th floor. He found another access panel and carefully opened it, emerging into a quiet corridor. The lighting was dimmed for the sleep cycle, casting long shadows that helped conceal his presence. Minho moved silently toward the east wing, his heart pounding in his chest. Counselor Jiwoo's door was marked with her family symbol, a stylized representation of Elysia's 3 moons. Minho hesitated, suddenly unsure. What if she called security immediately? What if she was as prejudiced against dragons as Elder Taeho? Through his neural interface, he felt a gentle reassurance from Stormwing. The dragon was far away, but their connection remained strong. Minho took a deep breath and pressed the door chime. Long seconds passed. Then the door slid open, revealing Counselor Jiwoo in her night robes. Her eyes widened in shock at the sight of the small human boy standing in her doorway. "Please," Minho said quickly, before she could call for help. "I need to talk to you about the dragons." "About Stormwing?" Jiwoo stared at him in disbelief. "You're human, the child from the crash? You're real?" "My name is Minho," he said. "And yes, I'm real. Please, I don't have much time." After a moment of hesitation, Jiwoo stepped aside. "Come in, quickly." Her quarters were spacious and filled with plants, some native to Elysia, others that Minho recognized from his parents' research as being from other worlds. One wall was covered with ancient-looking scrolls and tablets. "You study the old texts," Minho observed. "Yes," Jiwoo replied, still watching him with amazement. "They contain knowledge that many of my people have forgotten or chosen to ignore." She gestured to a seat. "Sit, please. Tell me why you've taken such a risk to find me." Minho sat down, noticing that the furniture was too large for his human frame. "I came because of what I learned from Stormwing. The dragons aren't just animals. They're intelligent beings with their own language and culture, and they're vital to Elysia's ecosystem." "I've suspected as much," Jiwoo said, her expression serious. "The old texts speak of a partnership between our species, not domination. But Elder Taeho and his supporters dismiss such ideas as primitive superstition. It's more than just stories," Minho said earnestly. "Stormwing showed me the heart of the world. It's dying because there aren't enough dragons to maintain it." Jiwoo gasped. "You've seen the heart? It's real?" "Very real," Minho confirmed. "And in danger. Without the dragons, especially the storm-class dragons like Stormwing, the weather patterns will continue to worsen. The storms will get stronger until they threaten all life on Elysia." He touched the neural interface on his head. "This lets me communicate with Stormwing. We share thoughts and feelings. The dragons never needed to be tamed, they needed to be understood." Jiwoo studied the device with interest. "A neural translator? Fascinating. Our ancestors might have used something similar." She walked to her wall of scrolls and selected one, carefully unrolling it on a table. "Look at this." The scroll showed an ancient drawing of an Elysian wearing a circlet similar to Minho's neural interface. The Elysian stood beside a dragon, their hands touching. "The speakers," Jiwoo explained, "Elysians who could communicate with dragons." The tradition died out centuries ago when our people began to see technology as superior to such connections. Minho felt a surge of hope. Then you believe me? I do, Jiwoo said. But convincing others will be difficult. Elder Taeho has declared you and Stormwing dangerous fugitives. There's a reward for your capture. We need to show them the truth, Minho insisted. Arrange a meeting with council members who might listen. Stormwing can prove his intelligence to them. Jiwoo considered this. It would be risky, but perhaps possible. There are 3 other council members who have questioned Taeho's policies toward dragons. If they saw proof, a sudden alarm blared throughout the colony, making both of them jump. A voice announced over the public address system, "Alert. Unauthorized entry detected in Residential Tower 1. All security personnel report immediately." This is not a drill. They know you're here, Jiwoo said, her voice urgent. You must leave now, Minho stood quickly. Will you help us? Yes, she promised. Go to the Eastern Ridge tomorrow at midday. I'll bring those who are willing to listen. The sound of running footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. Jiwoo hurried to a wall panel and pressed a hidden switch. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage. This leads to the service area, she explained. From there you can reach the outer wall. Hurry. Thank you, Minho said, ducking into the passage. Be careful, young human, Jiwoo called after him. You carry a wisdom my people have forgotten. As the wall closed behind him, Minho sent a quick thought to Stormwing through their connection. I found help, but I need to run now. The dragon's response came immediately, filled with concern and determination. I am coming, small one. Hold on. Minho raced through the dark passage, hoping he could reach the Eastern Ridge before the Elysian security forces caught up with him. Tomorrow would bring either a new beginning for Elysia or the end of his and Stormwing's freedom. The Eastern Ridge glowed golden in the midday light of Elysia's 3 suns. Minho sat on a large rock, watching the sky for any sign of approaching vessels. Beside him, Stormwing rested with his wings half folded, ready to take flight at the first sign of danger. Do you think she'll come? Minho asked, adjusting the neural interface on his head. After his narrow escape from the colony the night before, he wasn't sure if Counselor Jiwoo would risk helping them. She will come, Stormwing replied through their mental link. I sense her sincerity through your memories of her. The connection between them had grown stronger each day. Sometimes Minho could feel what Stormwing felt without even trying. The joy of flight, the warmth of the sun on scales, the deep concern for the future of Elysia. There, Stormwing said suddenly, his head lifting. A vessel approaches. Minho squinted against the bright sky. A small Elysian transport was indeed heading toward the ridge. It moved slowly, as if trying not to appear threatening. It's her, Minho confirmed as the vessel drew closer. But she's not alone. The transport landed a safe distance away. The door slid open and Counselor Jiwoo stepped out. She was followed by 3 other Elysians, 2 females and 1 male, all wearing the formal robes of council members. Stay alert, Minho told Stormwing. If anything seems wrong, we fly away immediately. The dragon rumbled in agreement, his neural pathways flashing with cautious colors. Jiwoo approached first, her hands raised to show she carried no weapons. Minho, she called. These are the council members I told you about. They have agreed to listen. Minho stepped forward, standing protectively in front of Stormwing. Thank you for coming, he said. This is Stormwing. He won't hurt you if you don't try to capture us. The 3 council members stared in awe at the massive dragon. One of the females stepped forward. I am Counselor Minji, she said. I have studied the old texts like Jiwoo. I want to understand. The male counselor introduced himself next. I am Counselor Doyun. I have questioned Elder Taeho's policies for years. The sacrifices never seemed right to me. The 3rd counselor, an older female with silver markings on her blue skin, nodded. I am Counselor Yuna. I remember stories my grandmother told about dragons as partners, not beasts. I want to know if they were true. Minho felt Stormwing's approval through their link. Thank you all for coming, the boy said. What I'm about to show you will change everything you thought you knew about dragons. He turned to Stormwing and nodded. The dragon lowered his massive head until it was level with the Elysians. Minho placed his hand on Stormwing's snout, strengthening their connection. Through this neural interface, Minho explained, I can communicate with Stormwing. Not just simple commands, but complex thoughts and ideas. Dragons aren't animals to be tamed. They're intelligent beings with their own culture and history. Impossible, Counselor Do-hyun said, though his voice held more wonder than disbelief. Our scientists have studied dragons for generations. Your scientists tried to control, not communicate, Minho replied. My parents were human researchers. They suspected the truth but never got the chance to prove it. Stormwing's neural pathways glowed brightly. Through their connection, Minho felt the dragon's desire to speak directly to the Elysians. Stormwing wants to show you something, Minho said. He removed the neural interface from his head and held it out. Who wants to try? The counselors exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, Jiwoo stepped forward. I will. Minho carefully placed the device on her head, adjusting it to fit her larger skull. It might feel strange at first, he warned. Just relax and open your mind. Jiwoo gasped as the connection formed. Her eyes widened and her hands trembled. I can feel him, she whispered. His thoughts. They're so clear. What is he saying? Counselor Minji asked eagerly. He's showing me images, Jiwoo said, her voice filled with wonder. The heart of the world. It's real. And it's failing. She turned to her fellow counselors. The dragons, especially the storm class, maintain the heart's energy. Without them, the weather patterns are destabilizing. The increasing storms, Counselor Yuna realized. The floods and droughts. It's all connected. There's more, Jiwoo continued, still connected to Stormwing. Long ago, Elysians and dragons were partners. We communicated freely. We worked together to build our civilization. Her expression grew sad, but then we began to see ourselves as superior. We tried to control the dragons instead of working with them. We forgot how to listen. One by one, each counselor took a turn with the neural interface. Each had a similar reaction: shock, wonder, and then understanding. When they had all experienced the connection, they gathered together, speaking quietly among themselves. Finally, Counselor Do-hyun turned to Minho and Stormwing. We believe you, he said, but Elder Taeho and his supporters control the council. They will never accept this truth willingly. Then we must show everyone, Minho said. Not just the council, but all Elysians. How? Counselor Minji asked. Minho looked up at Stormwing, and through their connection a plan formed between them. The Festival of Three Moons, the boy said. It's in 2 days, right? Everyone will gather in the central plaza. Yes, Jiwoo confirmed. Even Elder Taeho will be there to lead the ceremonies. Then that's when we'll come, Minho decided. Stormwing will bring other dragons, ones who are willing to help. And I'll bring proof that can't be ignored. What proof? Counselor Yuna asked. Minho smiled. Water from the heart of the world. Just a small amount, but enough to show its power. When Elysians see it, they'll have to listen. The counselors looked uncertain. This is very risky, Jiwoo warned. If Taeho feels threatened, he might order the defense systems to fire on the dragons. We'll disable the defense grid, Counselor Do-hyun promised. I have access to the security systems. I can create a temporary shutdown during the festival. And we'll gather supporters, Counselor Minji added. There are many Elysians who question Taeho's ways but are afraid to speak out. Minho nodded. 2 days from now, then. When the 3 moons align, we'll come to the central plaza. As the counselors prepared to leave, Jiwoo approached Minho one last time. You are very brave, young human, she said. Your parents would be proud. Minho felt a lump in his throat at the mention of his parents. I hope so, he said quietly. I'm just trying to do what's right. That is all any of us can do, Jiwoo replied. She looked up at Stormwing. Thank you for showing us the truth, Great One. The dragon lowered his head in acknowledgement, his neural pathways glowing with respectful colors. After the Elysians departed, Minho and Stormwing returned to their mountain hideaway. They had much to prepare before the Festival of 3 Moons. Do you think it will work? Minho asked as they settled in their cave. It is a good plan, Stormwing replied, but Elder Taeho will not surrender his power easily. There will be danger. I know, Minho said, but we have to try. For the heart of the world, for the dragons, and for the future of Elysia. That night, Stormwing flew Minho back to the sacred crater. The heart of the world pulsed with a weaker light than before, its rhythm slightly uneven. It's getting worse, Minho observed worriedly. Yes, Stormwing confirmed. We must hurry. Minho carefully collected a small amount of the glowing liquid in a crystal vial he had fashioned. As the substance touched the vial, it seemed to bond with the crystal, making it glow from within. This will be our proof, Minho said, securing the vial in a pouch. No one can deny the power of the heart when they see it. On their way back to the mountains, Stormwing made several stops. At each location, he called out with a deep, resonating roar that echoed through the valleys. Other dragons appeared, smaller than Stormwing, with different colored scales and neural patterns, but clearly intelligent beings. Through their connection, Minho understood what was happening. Stormwing was calling for allies, explaining their plan, asking for help. Some dragons agreed immediately. Others were hesitant, fearful of the Elysians. By the time they returned to their cave, 7 dragons had pledged to join them at the festival. "It's not many," Minho said, looking at the small group of dragons now gathered on nearby ledges. "It is enough," Stormwing assured him. "These are the bravest of my kind. Together, we will show the Elysians the truth." The day before the festival, Minho couldn't sleep. He sat at the edge of the cave looking down at the distant lights of the colony. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. Stormwing settled beside him, his large body radiating comforting warmth in the cool night air. "Are you afraid, small one?" the dragon asked gently. "Yes," Minho admitted, "but not of failing. I'm afraid of what comes after. If we succeed, I won't be invisible anymore. I'll have to face who I am, a human child alone on an alien world." Stormwing's neural pathways glowed with warm colors. "You are not alone," the dragon reminded him. "You have me, and soon perhaps you will have a place among both dragons and Elysians." Minho leaned against the dragon's side, drawing comfort from his presence. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "I'm glad I saved you." "And I'm glad you did, Minho," Stormwing replied. "Now rest. Tomorrow we make history." As the 3 moons began their journey toward alignment, Minho finally drifted to sleep, dreaming of a world where humans, Elysians, and dragons lived in harmony, a world his parents would have loved to see.